As another year comes to an end, I thought it would be a good time to reflect on the past 12 months. Whilst perhaps not as chaotic as 2020, it has presented its own challenges. And with that in mind, let's take a look at some of the more challenging things that have appeared on my workbench this year. I'm Matt, this is Model Minutes, and join me as I take a look at the worst 5 models I built this year. To make this list, I've had to balance a couple of things, including my ability to complete them, the finish at the end, and the quality of the kit in general. This video will feature some older tooling kits, and whilst I imagine some people will comment that it's not fair to judge older kits in comparison to more modern ones, I actually put a poll out on my channel a little while ago addressing this issue. 90% of more than 800 people agreed that manufacturers should put the tooling date on their kits, which means that if a vintage tooling is labelled as such, I will treat it that way. But as a review channel, if manufacturers continually try to sneak old kits onto our workbenches in new boxes, then I will measure them as such. So, with that out of the way, and without any further ado, let's get started at number 5. This position is awarded to the Revell Swap with Camel in 1/72nd scale. Now, whilst the kit isn't that bad, despite the tooling dating from the 1960s, it did take me a 2-year period to build it. When I started it back in 2019, I wasn't as careful as I am now, which has led to some seams and gaps which probably could have been avoided had I started this kit today. The included decals are pretty good, but those instructions being printed in black and white can cause a bit of confusion when trying to select the right colours. Giving this kit credit where it's due though, it was quite a fun build, and maybe next time I'll have a go at doing some rigging on it. Fortunately, there are some kits which have been much worse than this one, which is why this sits in this 5th position. Coming in at number 4 is the USS Missouri from The Works. I think that although it isn't a particularly expensive kit, or even that large, it was just a bit meh. It just didn't give me that excited feeling when I was building it, and now that it's done, I almost forgot I had built it. Whilst I did paint this kit compared to the other ships in the series, which I simply left in bare plastic, it all pretty much just blurs into one colour due to the small scale. So yeah, not terrible, just not great. At number 3 is the Airfix Seahawk in 1/72nd scale. I had this given to me by a friend as they weren't going to build it, and this particular version dates from 2010. Note that it is in the current style box and not indicated as a vintage kit. Unfortunately, it is very vintage, with the tooling dating from 1957. To that end, it's just a really clunky kit, which I think is very misleading to release as a normal branded kit in the Airfix range at the time. I built it a bit like a beginner too, opting to hand paint for the most part, and that white paint is just terrible. The stuff included in the set just didn't really work and was blotchy and transparent. The grey colour wasn't too bad, and whilst the decals went on okay, they were a little translucent with some less than perfect printing. I think Airfix have learned a few lessons over the last 10 years or so. Hopefully they won't be doing this kind of thing with their ranges in the future. Before I move on to the top spots, let's look at some honourable mentions. These are kits which weren't quite bad enough to make a ranked spot in this video, but ones that I'm still not sure how I feel. The Academy F16 in 1/144th scale was a kit that I thought was just a bit weird. The way it looks is a bit off. Whilst fairly easy to paint and build, the decals were thicker and more papery than I would have liked, with some odd colour choices. The look of the finished kit though made me feel like someone designed the parts from memory or someone else's description of the real F16. Another kit worth mentioning is this Airfix Spitfire Mark I, which I recently built as part of my superglue challenge, where I replaced normal model glues with some cheap superglue to assemble the kit. Whilst outwardly it doesn't look too bad, The act of using superglue has caused a few issues, and on the whole, I would have to admit that, as a result, it's probably not one of the best assembled kits ever featured on my channel. Anyways, with those guys out of the way, let's get back to the list. The second place spot is taken up by the Airfix Zero in 1/72nd scale, which I built as part of another challenge video. This time I set myself a strict budget and had to use some really cheap paints to finish the kit. Now, this kit in essence is absolutely fine and has no business being on this list, other than the fact this is probably one of the worst looking models I've ever completed. I guess there is a reason why modelling paints are a bit more expensive than those cheap artist ones in the craft shop. The paints I used, whilst fitting inside my budget, were just not suitable for use on scale models. They were too transparent, left brush marks, filled in the details, and even refused to stick to the plastic. So sadly, this good kit with a bad paint job takes second place on this list this year. And here it is. In my opinion, the worst kit I built during 2021 was the Academy Hughes 500D helicopter in 1/48 scale. I would like to say that objectively, the quality of the tooling is generally quite good, with some really nice details. There was a bit of flash on the parts, which was quite manageable. It did look to be a fairly simple kit to construct, so I thought it wouldn't take too long to do. Sadly, I was a bit optimistic and it actually took an entire weekend rather than the original few hours I had planned for it. The motorcycle and rider was a bit more complicated to paint due to the way the parts had been moulded, and it was reluctant to stand up properly even if you followed the instructions correctly. The helicopter wasn't too bad to build, but I think it was the decals that really put the nail in the coffin of this kit. They are simply the worst I've ever used. They are poorly printed, being messy and crude with bad registration. The film was too thick and papery, and I actually had to use extra thin cement to melt them onto the plastic, as my normal decal solutions just weren't doing anything to them. So yeah, I'm glad this kit is done, but I kind of regret starting it. And with that, my list is now complete. What were your worst builds this year? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. Some of the build videos for a few kits in this list haven't been uploaded yet, so if you would like to see them, make sure you subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss out when they go live. Shout out to my patrons and channel members for the amazing extra support they give me, allowing me to feed my addiction and to continue to complete projects for you all to enjoy with me. Take a look at the links in the description for more information. Finally, a massive thank you to you for watching this one, and I'll see you on the workbench again next time.